In the propaganda films of 1944, they were Comrade Ivan the Brave, Soviet brothers holding the Eastern Front together. But as the Western Allies and the Red Army drew closer in the spring of 1945, the smiling handshakes captured on camera concealed a growing sense of unease among the American high command. The mood had shifted. What began as cautious admiration was quietly becoming something far more unsettling. American generals like Patton, Bradley, and Eisenhower were products of a particular tradition. They believed in organized warfare, in logistics, in technology, and in preserving the lives of their soldiers wherever possible. So when they finally came face to face with the Red Army along the Elbe River, they were not prepared for what they encountered. What stood before them did not resemble a modern military force. It resembled something far older and, in their eyes, far more frightening. The first thing that struck the American commanders was how primitive the Soviet war machine appeared in comparison to their own. The United States Army was fully mechanized. Every unit had trucks, every soldier had access to proper supplies and hot meals. The Red Army, by contrast, moved on a combination of advanced T-34 tanks and horse-drawn wooden carts. General Omar Bradley observed with genuine astonishment that the Soviets appeared to operate without any recognizable supply chain. They sustained themselves by taking from the land and from the villages they passed through. George Patton was the most blunt in his assessments. After watching a Soviet military review, he recorded his thoughts privately, noting that Soviet logistics were laughable and that their forces moved with stolen livestock and looted horses yet somehow kept advancing. He described them as a disorganized mass of men with no regard for human life. His words were harsh, but they pointed to something the American commanders found genuinely difficult to process. The tactical methods of the Red Army disturbed the Americans deeply. Soviet commanders were observed clearing minefields by simply marching their infantry straight through them. To an American general trained to preserve every life, this looked like organized slaughter. To Soviet commanders, it was simply a matter of keeping momentum. The difference in values could not have been more stark. When American forces entered Soviet-occupied sections of Berlin, the professional respect they had carried for the Red Army began to erode rapidly. Eisenhower, who was known for his measured and diplomatic temperament, was visibly shaken by what intelligence officers reported back to him. Soviet soldiers had been granted what amounted to days of unchecked freedom in the city, during which looting and violence against civilians became widespread. American officers described Soviet troops as completely beyond the control of their officers once active combat ended. Soldiers were seen firing weapons into the air while intoxicated and behaving in ways that violated every principle of military conduct the Americans held dear. General Lucius Clay, who would later become central to the Berlin airlift, described negotiations with Soviet generals as something entirely without common ground. There was no shared code of military honor. Every interaction felt transactional, and the weight behind every conversation was the silent reminder of the enormous force the Soviets could bring to bear. By the end of 1945, the American generals had reached a collective conclusion. The Red Army was no longer an ally in any meaningful sense. It was a looming threat that dominated every strategic conversation. Its technology lagged behind the West, but its sheer numbers and the indifference of its leadership to casualties made it something deeply difficult to counter. These were soldiers who had been hardened by years of the most brutal fighting in human history, and who had emerged from it without fear. Patton grew increasingly vocal about the need for preemptive action. He believed that the window to act was closing and that without decisive intervention, the Red Army would eventually extend its reach across the entire continent. The men who led the United States through the Second World War departed Europe, carrying a warning they could not ignore. They had removed one threat from the world only to find themselves standing across a river from another. The partnership had been real once, but by the time the flags were lowered, they understood it was over, and that what came next would define the world for generations.